Bonsoir, fellow mini enthusiasts. Today, Gobelin Gang, we proudly represent the people who do not want to take an arrow straight to the face in their open helmet. Seriously, why are your horses more protected than your dudes, Grand Cathay? So, today we're fixing that. As a quick reminder, we're converting my Grand Cathay models into a Cities of Sigmar totally legal and very unique looking army. I'm starting with the helmets for my future Steelhelms. But honestly, what I came up with could also work perfectly for regular Cathayan soldiers too. So let's brainstorm ways to protect those beautiful faces. Mostly so I don't have to paint them, but with class of course. When I design anything, I love having a lot of references. And if you look closely, you can definitely find inspiration for the current Grand Cathay helmet in there. At some point I have to force myself to stop gathering references because if I don't, I'll end up with 10 gigabytes of images before drawing anything. So now that we're all set, let's start drawing. I usually start with a couple of studies as a warm-up just to get a feel for what Cities of Sigmar and Grand Cathay helmet actually look like. I didn't film that, so let me know if you'd like to see the studies next time. I did get distracted and draw this cool, almost vampire-looking decoration. I don't know, it looked cool, alright? I'm putting a pin on that. Then I start drawing our first candidate for a closed helmet, using what I learned and the motif I liked the most from my reference board. I quickly sketch a head underneath because surprisingly proportion really matter when you're designing a helmet. And just like Grandpa Nurgle, I love the number 3, so I thought it would be neat to start with a grid inspired by one of the most recognizable symbols of the Grand Cathay. Now I could explain my whole drawing process, brush, layers and all that, but I will save that for later, only if you want it, Gobelin Gang, because the next helmet and shield are going to get way more spicy. So tell me in the comments and I'll happily do a proper breakdown next time. Pretty quickly, I'll start struggling with only having a front view. I realized I was adding shapes that make no sense, like this moon thing that has absolutely nothing to do with any of our team. That's a telltale sign for me that I need to try something else. So I drew a quick profile and started placing the same lines there, making sure the helmet actually works in 3 dimensions. That includes the grid and those 2 laser flaps. That's also when I started wondering how I could include the twin-tailed comet. And then my beloved reminded me how much he detested the plumes on the Grand Cathay helmet. He's a certified hater of the ponytail thingy. I actually like them, but not on my canon fodder. Since he loves the High Elf helmet from the Lord of the Rings, and I agree that the shape is pretty unique, I decide to flip the comet and use it in reverse. Not in a spiky Stormcast way though, the aesthetic here is much more flowy. I added a shape to support the comet, turned it into a half horseshoe and felt very proud of myself. Somehow, I managed to include the Year of the Horse. Totally intentional, definitely planned. For the confused goblin in the back, yes, we're in the Chinese Year of the Fire Horse, and I'd really like to integrate that into this army's identity. Then it was time to fumble with the front view again. Should the comet tails be on both sides of the sphere or centered? I do like asymmetry, but in this case it didn't look great. Both Age of Sigmar and Grand Cathay lean heavily into symmetry anyway, so this felt like the right call. To better visualize the design, I start carving the shapes in black, grey and white, aiming to make it look like a grey miniature with a zenithal highlight. I usually make metals a bit shinier, just to get a rough idea of what they would look like with metallic paint on them. For me, the first try is rarely the best, but while working on it, I always come up with new ideas for the next version. At that point, I already knew I really liked the comet. It looks really cool, it adds silhouette, and this helmet can now double as a weapon. Headbutting is always an option. I also really like the double ring on the side, and I keep this idea for the next helmet, which I like a lot more. Let's move right on to it. There's one motif in Cathayan armor that appears all the time, this very interesting circle thingy. Yes, my art vocabulary is incredibly precise, merci beaucoup. But imagine turning that motif into a grid and wrapping it around a helmet. Doesn't that sound like a cool design? As always, I block in the overall shape in black first and dig into the details later. And yes, I kept most of my original drawing. I'm not redoing part I don't need to. Yay, efficiency! Also, I pulled the Bob Ross and had a happy accident. While trying to add more on that motif, I ended up with this extra shape on top, and the more I looked at it, the more it reminded me of firefighter helmets, which is kind of perfect for a fire horse army. I love it when the universe let me feel smart for no reason. Dopamine boost achieved! From there, I just had to figure out how it works from the side and how it will look once shaded. It's always wild how much shading and highlights can elevate a design. But the more I worked on it, the more I felt like my first helmet was lacking. So I started a third version, mixing elements from the first and second designs. I like having variation between helmets anyway. Using the incredible power of copy-paste, high contrast and completely improvised reflections, I ended up with a third helmet that I'm genuinely very proud of. I mean, don't they both look so cool? Okay, the first one looks a bit meh compared to them, but I want your opinion before I doom it forever. What I really like about this design is that if I do my job right when sculpting, I could make a front piece that you just add on to existing Cathayan helmet. Like a grid front thingy. Something you can just slap on and boom, close the helmet. No face painting, no shenanigans. If you know what that is called, educate me in the comment please. So, what do you think, Gobelin Gang? Which of the 3 helmets do you like the most? Should I only sculpt the last 2 in 3D? I've rambled long enough, so next time we'll tackle shields. And there again, I want a proper hybrid of both styles. If that sounds interesting, don't forget to subscribe and join the Gobelin Gang. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Put 3 helmet emojis in the comment so I know you're part of the secret end of the video club. Like the video to motivate my little goblin butt to keep pushing this dream project. And as always, Gobelin Gang, bonne chance with your hobby les amis!